Yes, so I thought I would start out by giving an introductory.
I'm very pleased to introduce our speaker, Alan Field. Alan is active in the fight against our climate crisis in many ways. To name just a few, he's the co-founder and current head of Cool Winchester, a local organization that helps the residential sector of Winchester become a model of energy efficiency and conservation. He also volunteers at Right Lock Farm, which is an organic farm that grows and sells produce and offers educational programs for children and adults. And he's also a member of Sustainable Winchester, the Winchester Climate Action Advisory Committee, Heat Smart Alliance, and 350 Metro North. I'm sure there's many more activities that he's involved in, but we'll leave it at that. His presentation is going to run about 10 minutes and then, or 15. And then if you have a question, if you could please put it in the chat. At the main session, people put a Q at the beginning to identify that that was a question specifically for Alan versus just conversation back and forth among participants. That would be helpful. We'll get to as many as we can at the end. It's very helpful if people remain muted because it keeps the ambient noise from interfering inadvertently. And without further ado, Alan Field.
Thank you, as I'm muting my coughing. Yes, so I thought I would start out by giving an introductory view of what Drawdown is for about 10 minutes. And then we can have some, as Mary says, some questions and discussion about it afterwards. So Project Drawdown is a nonprofit organization that seeks to help the world reach, quote, drawdown. What is drawdown? Well, drawdown is a future point in time when levels of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere stop climbing and start to steadily decline. In 2017, Project Drawdown issued the book called Drawdown. It's a New York Times bestseller. This is the book right here, you can see. Great book. I found it very interesting to read, with each topic displayed on either 1 or 2 pages usually. And why don't I just open at random and show you a couple of pages and see if I understand what it has on the page. This will be an adventure for me. I'm just going to pick a random opening here somewhere. Okay, it says, you can see it there, and then I have to look at it. Wave, about energy, wave and tidal. So in this case, it's a 2-page spread. It devotes 2 pages to this. It gives a nice background description about it. On each page, it'll have some statistics here about how many gigatons of CO2 can be reduced over a period of time, which is by 2050. And it also has figures about what the net cost of doing such a thing might be, and what the actual, sometimes the actual financial savings could be over that period of time. So just so you can just get a sense of what the book looks like, it's kind of pleasant reading because it's got some pictures, it's got words, and it's not too long. Let me just pick another page. Clean cook stoves. Okay, now this is interesting that I opened to this page because it illustrates something, which is that this is an issue that really does not pertain to us here, I think. This really pertains more to the developing world, where large numbers of people cook over highly polluting stoves. So that's a significant issue. Oh, and incidentally, it has a ranking. This is ranked number 21. So it's that there are 20 actions they think that might have greater impact than this, but it's significant out of a list of 100 or so. So that's the book. The book's, it's not exactly a guide to personal behavior, as we just saw with the cook stoves. It's sometimes about, well, that is personal behavior, but it's not our personal behavior. It's a global view of what can be done to reverse, by about 2050, the rise of global warming emissions using many existing proven methods. Some methods are at an industrial scale, so those are the ones that don't relate so much to us, or some of them relate more to people in the developing world, like the cook stoves, and some can relate to our families and communities here in Middlesex County. So for example, some that do relate to us might be what we eat, about food waste, about our renewable energy use, about insulation, transportation, and so on. In fact, I just have to say about renewable energy, Mike Barrett pointed out that, well, our electricity source is not that clean. Well, people do in fact have a choice of choosing 100% renewable electricity. So he kind of overlooked that little point. Let me just look at my notes here. So Drawdown that book describes about 100 existing proven methods that can collectively start to reverse the increase of greenhouse gas emissions. But I personally, a little editorializing here, I must ask, how effective will we be, how likely are we as human societies to actually pursue all these 100 measures effectively and globally? It's great that there is the possibility of reversing it, but the possibility is only if we do all 100 things effectively. So that's a big challenge. We're not effective at preventing this climate crisis. So how effective will we be at getting out of this climate crisis? That's going to be a challenge. Certainly doing the best we can is better than inaction. And therein lies the value of Drawdown, I think. It points out some of the things we can do. And it's also educational to understand what others can do. In 2020, the project issued an update named Drawdown Review. The content is largely the same as the Drawdown book I showed you, but the priorities described have changed a bit as they have updated the data. What is great about Drawdown Review is this wonderful website where you can explore and where one can download free the complete book. So like I showed you a paper book, but you can get an electronic book for free. I'll show you both the book and the website. We don't have time to get too much into the details of Drawdown, but you'll learn some as we go along. I just wanted to give you an idea of what is available so you can explore it more yourselves. What I'm going to do now is do a screen share and hopefully show you more about the book and the website. So I'm going to select screen share, and I've got to decide what I'm going to share, which I have now selected. Make sure I do this right. Okay. So now I have to move the windows a bit to make this work, I think, for you effectively. If I cover up one window, now do you just do a thumbs up, do you just see one window saying Drawdown Review? Fantastic, that's what I want. What I did is I hid my other window behind it, so I think that works pretty well. So this is what the cover of this electronic, actually it is available in paper, but electronic version, what it looks like. I want to show you just a little bit in the book so you get a feel for what it's like. Here's the table of contents, and unlike the original Drawdown, they've decided to organize things in 3 major categories. The first one is the one we often think about, where it says reduce sources, right there. These are the things, about electricity, food and agriculture, transportation that we're often talking about. Excuse me. Second division they have is supporting sinks. How do we not only reduce emissions, but how do we draw down or recapture some of the carbon, that's the excessive carbon that's been emitted? And the third category they have is improved society, the social issues that relate to the environment, environmental justice and other issues. What I thought I would do is, just so you could get a feeling of what the book looks like, kind of just skim through a few pages so you can see, like the other one, it's got some pictures, text, just to don't bother trying to read it, just to get a feel for it. Now I want to stop at this. Just again, this illustrates graphically the concept of drawdown. Here we are on a line of increased CO2 emissions, as you know, and it's been going up and up and up. Drawdown is if we can start to bend that curve, and it's the point where we are no longer increasing emissions and are starting to actually reduce atmospheric CO2 levels. So that's the drawdown point where the little dot is right there. If I go on further, they have various ways of graphically representing things that are interesting to look at. You know, large circles are more significant than small circles. And so here's reduced sources. And the first topic they have is electricity. And they go through issues related to electricity. This one I found was interesting in that onshore wind is a big, this is a lower aspirations and a higher aspiration size circles. But if we do the most ambitious work on this, we can achieve a lot with onshore wind. It's interesting that offshore wind is actually smaller. For us in Massachusetts, it's a great option. And we don't have a good one for onshore. I think it's because there's significant cost in building offshore wind that we don't have when we're doing onshore. I better keep moving because I see the time is moving. So maybe I will just do a little bit more here. You can see it has examples in the electricity sector, various issues there. And eventually we get on to the next topic, food, agriculture, and land use. Okay, now I'm going to shift. That's the book, the electronic book, which you can download. I'm going to shift to the website. I'm going to make this screen a bit smaller and put this one on top of it. Okay, can you now see the one that says drawdown? Okay, fantastic. Thanks for the thumbs feedback. So what I want to do is just show you one way of looking at this stuff is the priority order of things. So this is the homepage on the Project Drawdown website. If I go over to solutions, and I might first just mention, see where it says the drawdown review. If you follow that, that'll get you to where you can download the book itself. I will also provide in a couple of minutes the links. There is a link that actually gets you even more directly to it than going this way, but that's one way to do it. But what I want to go now is to the solutions and the table of solutions. And it's great, you know, being a nonprofit organization that they provide this wealth of information just for us to use, which is fantastic. So if I scroll down here, we get to a table. And scenario one here is the less ambitious, but still ambitious approach to about 100 topics. So scenario two is if we want to try to get there before 2050, like by 2040, 2045, this might be 2050, 2055. But I'm going to take the scenario one and come on, click on it there. You can see these numbers here are in order, 87.45, and they get down to be smaller and smaller numbers. This number represents the gigatons of CO2 equivalent reduced or sequestered between 2020 and 2050. So in this first topic, reduce food waste, interestingly, that comes out top of the list, surprised me a bit. They think that has the potential to really seriously reduce and even start sequestering carbon dioxide or greenhouse gas equivalents. Let me just take a peek at that. I'm going to click on reduce food waste. And it'll take you to a more specific page about it. I think this is great where it's not only about food waste, but here's the non-polluting transportation being used with food waste, but the main point is the food waste. And so this page right here, it gives a summary, right here, a solution summary about food waste. It gives a very brief statement here. I'll read part of it. Roughly a third of the world's food is never eaten, which means land and resources used and greenhouse gases emitted in producing it were unnecessary. Interventions can reduce loss and waste as food moves from farm to fork and to tummy, thereby reducing overall demand. And the summary gives you a little more information, but there's also something here called the technical summary. If I click on that, it has the same picture at the top, but it's got a lot more detailed information underneath about the methodology. If I go down further, about results, discussion, and references. So there's lots of information there. I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to the list, to our scenario 1 here again, and look at a second one, health and education. This also is maybe not the first thing that might come to mind as a very high priority area, but I think you'll see part of the reason why. Interesting, educating girls is the first part of the summary here. Family planning is the second. And, you know, I personally, there's a personal editorializing here about family planning. In my lifetime, my very own lifetime, when I was born, there were about a little over 2 billion people on the planet. And now we're getting close to 8 billion. I personally don't think that we can ever sustainably have a high quality of environment and life on planet Earth at a level like that. So part of the drawdown has to be, how do we do, you know, gradual and comfortable family drawdowns as well, so we get our population down somewhat. Likewise, it's got a technical summary. You can read lots more about it. Oh yeah, and underneath.
Alan, let me just jump in to let you know we have about 10 more minutes. We don't have any questions in the chat, so.
Yeah, maybe if somebody has a question and you want to type it in the chat, or we can, or if you want to ask it, I think we could ask out. We're a small group. We could just do it out loud
just
too.
Unmute people. Okay.
Yeah,
and
but I should wind up soon, so we have a little bit of time for that.
okay,
But,
I'll unmute, but maybe people can also raise hand. But
sure, yeah, or maybe they can unmute themselves. So anyway, if you like graphic representations, you can see related solutions that are underneath this the topic atop about health and education. Let me just mention 2 more without going into the details, because we should save a little bit of time. Plant-rich diets, interestingly, again, is another one. And as we I think all know, that eating red meat, for example, has a very high environmental burden. And so if we can be eating plant protein instead of beef protein, that would be an advantage. And going back to one more, okay, refrigerant management. This is good to just mention because it's unlike the first 3. We don't have as much we can do about this. It's a really big issue globally, where there's all kinds of refrigerants used in all kinds of devices around the world. It relates to us a little bit. You know, if we have a heat pump or something at home, or a refrigerator, how it's disposed makes a difference. If it's not done properly and they leak the refrigerant, that's damaging our environment. So it does relate a bit to us, but it's a much bigger global issue. So I think with that, let me just copy so you have time to grab it. I'm going to copy the links that I want to put in the chat. And if you want to, I'm just going to copy them here.
And I just want to, I thought I did what I needed to do to allow people to unmute. Is that not correct?
Well, if it doesn't work, we can go back. We can just go back to the group. I think it'll probably work. We'll try it. Let me just get this thing here. Oh no, did I? Here it is. I just lost my, well, I can get the chat here. I think I might have just left the room. Anyway. Okay, I just posted in the chat. Can one of you see something in the chat that just appeared? Good, okay. So you've got that there. And if you want to copy it, if you click to the 3 little dots to the right, it will give you a choice to copy it. And then if you just stick it into any kind of a document or notepad or something you have on your computer, you will have it saved. So I won't, the link for Drawdown is drawdown.org, so you can really pretty much remember that without having to have the link. So let's see, at this point, I'm not quite clear if I'm still in, I think I fell out of Screenshare when I clicked my bar. So I think we're all together just in the breakout room now. So would anyone like to comment on any with these areas or have questions or whatever? Yes, Nilly.
Question, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to leave in like literally a minute.
Okay,
But
that's all right. I
but I'm
understand.
curious if you could say like maybe one way that this work has, if you can just make the connection to then your local activism or your local work and how it has influenced it, that would be, I'd love to hear that.
Yes, as I was saying, it's sort of an educational tool, and it's not exactly a local action guide because a number of the topics don't relate to us directly, but they do relate to us tangentially. So anyway, I think it's been great. Like here in Winchester, there've been different events at times, and sometimes in some of the church communities and others where they've had a drawdown event, and I think it's been helpful to raise people's awareness about both about global warming, climate change, about carbon emissions, and also that there are all kinds of things that could be done. Don't despair in that there are lots of things that could be done. So it's a call for a degree of optimism, although I threw a little pessimism in there just to dampen that down. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's not a guide to local action, but I think it's a good educational tool. Yeah, Tom, I think you were putting your hand up.
Yeah, I had a question on that chart about when the curve
Mm-hmm.
starts to flatten and then actually coming down. I'm confused between, so, when we stop putting more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere versus when the levels of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere actually start to come down, because even if we stop putting any more, what's
Mhm.
already up there takes a long time to, on its own, dissipate. At least carbon does. And
Yeah. Yeah. Now I've heard estimates of hundreds to even thousands of years. I don't know if thousands is an exaggeration, but it can be pretty long term. So you're right that if we just stop putting it up and just put the brakes on and stop, well, the things that we've done in the past will keep catching up with us, and it'll still keep going up, even if we aren't adding any more for a while. And
right.
secondly, it won't be going down. So I think this really relates to the actions that also enable the natural world to extract more carbon back out again. So for example, if agriculture is done differently, we can emit less, but we can also possibly sequester more carbon back onto agricultural land than we're doing currently. So I think but I worry that the degree of sequestration is going to not be sufficient without some really new or collectively a lot of methods to bring it down. I happen to have a part of a family forest, but there's a limit as to even what our family forest can do, in that in Massachusetts used to be more forest than there is now. So we're still not even doing as well as we did 400 years ago with forests. So I'm not a big, the carbon sequestration by mechanical means is not proven at scale, it has its own emissions that are related to it and its own enormous cost related to it. So I don't think they count that in Countdown as an option at the moment. But you'd have to study the book more to see how they really argue that the drawdown methods are sufficient to actually reverse the process. Yeah.
Thank
Anybody else?
you, Alan. Any other questions? We're coming up right up to 11:28, but
it's great. I'd encourage you just to download it. It's quite easy. My preference is to have things downloaded so I can just click on them and there they are. And just once in a while, just take a little walk through it, and you'll find a lot of interesting stuff in there. And you can sort of go as deep into the weeds as you want. You can skim along, and that's fine, or you can dig into details. Yeah, Tom.
Okay, one other question. So, what do you think is the most effective thing we can do, to reduce our carbon footprint, that the book, supports?
Yeah, well, as a resident of Winchester and, as a homeowner, my personal goal a number of years ago was to at least to see that my household here was as carbon neutral as possible. And so, we have actually achieved that. And I could briefly summarize that it was easier for us than for many people because it already was an all electric house, even though it wasn't an efficient one. And we had no oil and we had no gas. So that was a great head start, right? But we needed more insulation. We got the house much better insulated. We installed we had an old heat pump system. We stopped using it. It was a ducted all house system, and we installed a mini split in the living room, just one. And we're actually getting by with one, and that was not expensive. This is like $3,200 after rebates. And it enabled us to keep the living room warm and survive in the rest of the house. And it's just 2 of us, so it's not for everybody. We have no heat upstairs, no heat in the basement, and we're doing okay. And then I bought an electric vehicle, and then my wife bought an electric vehicle. And so we have no more fossil fuel transportation vehicles. And we subscribe to 100% renewable electricity. So our cars, people say, oh, but your cars are dirty. No, they're actually using renewable energy to run, as is our house. And finally, then it dawned on me, oh, how about investments? Because we have some investments. And a couple of years ago, we worked on them. It takes a little while because you can't suddenly sell everything and get a lot of capital gains. But anyway, we did manage to clean out our investments, to get rid of all fossil fuel holdings, plus, while we're at it, a number of other things that we deemed undesirable. So I feel like, there's always more you can do. We still consume goods. We try to not consume much. We're not wasteful. I still have a shirt from my father who died 20 years ago that I use. It's never perfect, but I feel like we've done our part. And then now my part is, now that we've done it at home, I'm trying to, and it helps inform you about the things you do. I'm trying to do it in the community with the various organizations that I'm part of to try to encourage other people to act. Yeah, there you go.
Reverend Liz has put a question in the chat about wondering if there are any lesson plans that you have found. Are you in regards to for Drawdown, connected with Drawdown? Yeah. And I just have to comment on your beautiful baby. That's why we're all here, right?
Yes, there we are. Yeah.
All right, sorry.
Yeah, lesson plans in terms of schools, even though I used to work in schools, I have no idea.
Or the aquarium.
Yeah, or for the aquarium. If you Google online, there's tons of stuff about Drawdown and all kinds of videos, some of which may waste your time. But in short, I can't answer that question, but there should be, maybe Drawdown itself even has, if you look on that, maybe they have support materials that you could find there. Yeah, great.
Okay. Well, I don't see any more questions, so I do want to be sure that I thank you, Alan, for leading us through this introduction and also providing the resources that you have in the chat. I'll be sure to copy that and remind you that you will all be receiving an email with the recording link for the entire session, but also and all the breakouts so you can attend those as well. So thank you very much. You may return for informal. Yeah. Oh, excuse me. Yes.
I do have a quick question. Is there any way to just follow up and stay connected with you guys in case we have other questions? Or
yes, in the link, I put an email address. I frankly didn't want to put my personal one there, but I put that Cool Winchester one. That's the organization. And you might actually, as I put in there, it was an afterthought, but I realized on our website, we actually have a whole page I devoted to Drawdown. It's a five-page website. So you can take a peek at that. And that might, actually, if you look at our website, for Tom's question, if you look at our website, it might give you a little bit more of an idea about local actions that we take in Winchester. It's not comprehensive, but it does show some things.
All right.
I've been bouncing around to different rooms.
Oh, Elizabeth, hi.
Hi, Alan. But I just wanted to answer that question. We'll be sending out something that will allow people to connect however they might want to. There are some people who don't want their email shared, but we'll be sending out a request for anybody who wants to connect with others. So if you have the names of the people you want to connect with, we could share that.
Yeah, and as I don't know if you heard me mention, I did put an address in here that people can reach me at. So
Yeah,
they could do
and you
that.
can also email Sustainable Middlesex
Right.
at
And I just
Gmail.
took a screenshot, so I have all your names.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. I'm kind of co-leading a climate designers group that's fairly new too. So I'm on this journey as well, just to learn as much as I can. So
Yeah, Kelly, well, feel free to email me at that address and be
I
happy
will, yeah,
to
definitely.
communicate. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks for being attentive. I hope it was at the right level. I wanted to be sure it was introductory in case somebody didn't know anything about it. Yeah.
Yeah, worked for me. That's what I didn't know anything about it. So I'll
Oh,
definitely
great.
explore more. So thank you.
Yeah, it's cool, and I love nonprofits, and these folks are dedicated scientists, large number of them. I didn't get into that, but
Yes.
it was a big project. A lot of people
Yeah, a
put
lot of
information into it.
information.
Yeah. Well, great.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.